welcome and thank you for choosing Sophia Montessori. It's just been an amazing start of the school year, probably the hardest one we've ever had, but totally worth it. Wouldn't change it for the world. It's just been so good to see your children again, and then for families who are going to come at a later time, just so you guys know, it's just been such a joy. So thank you all.
Yeah.
Okay, so the format for today is we're going to go over the basics of Montessori at first, and then we'll be able to go a little bit deeper in. And then this way, hopefully we can also get to your own questions. So we'll go with the overview, and then from the overview, we will, dig a little deeper. So do you want to tell us about Maria Montessori?
Yeah, I'll talk about Maria Montessori. So Maria was born in Italy, in Ancona, Italy, to be precise, in the 1870s.
Mm-hmm.
She was also just incredibly precocious as an only child, and she became Italy's first woman doctor. So she was very famous for her accomplishments, for her role in just advocating for a better life. Italy during that time, the 1890s, was just at the height of just the terrors of the Industrial Revolution. So there were some terrible things going on for families, for children, and just things like that. She really wanted to improve that, and particularly work with children who were special needs. At that time, they were just put in institutions. They weren't cared for. And so it was her work with those children with special needs that really led her to realize the learning that humans go through. Mm-hmm. And she died in 1952. Mm-hmm. So she lived a very long, very busy life, and lived during probably some of the most tumultuous times of the 20th century. It's amazing what she did for children during that time. She also lived through the Spanish Revolution. So it's incredible what she was doing. And at that time, and never stopped advocating for children, researching, studying, learning. And she was an ardent Catholic during her life. And just this work that she's done in just showing us the abilities that children have are incredible. Yeah. And she herself said, and I know Pauline's going to say it at some point, she said, I have studied the child, I have taken what the child has given me and expressed it, and that is what's called the Montessori method. She did not name this as a method. She was just saying, this is how children learn. But she did not want to call it the Montessori method. That's what
she had a name about this long.
Yes.
People like, no, we're going to call it Montessori.
Of humanity. But that's in a nutshell who she was and what she was able to do for children.
And this year we actually celebrate her 150th birthday. I forgot.
Oh, that's remarkable. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so it was 1870.
Yeah.
So I think that quote just speaks so much to me, because you hear a lot about different approaches, and it's always about what the adult thinks is best. But what makes Montessori different is that she saw the children and let the children show what's best, not the other way around. So I think that really speaks to one of the many, many reasons we just absolutely love this approach. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the key Montessori concepts and principles that guide how the classroom is run and how we approach children's learning and how we give lessons. So the first one I want to mention briefly is the 4 planes of development. So Montessori talked about development from birth, even before birth, especially as science has continued to prove. So before birth to age 24 is about that age range that she looked at. So birth to age 6, she called the first plane of development, where the focus is all about teach me to do it myself, and let me do it myself, which if you have children under the 6 and under, you might know that it's all like, I'm going to do it myself. We're going to do this big thing. I want to do it. And that's one of the great gifts of that age group. Then the second plane is more about, so that's 6 to 12. And 6 to 12, the focus is more on intellectual independence. So being able to think abstractly and wanting to know things, what's real, being more interested in the abstract and what's not real and what's real, virtues,
the moral
friendships,
life,
the moral life.
the development of imagination is very important.
Yeah.
So
And then that's Miss Irene has studied both the first plane and the second plane, so she knows many things and teaches me a lot. And then the third plane would be 12 to 18. So then 12 to 18 is more about the social independence, like who am I within my peers, who am I within my community, how do I give back? And then 18 to 24 is a spiritual independence, like who am I within the world, and what is my vocation, and how do I give back and live according to what God has given me. So I think if any of us think back to those different planes of development, we can really see how accurate that is to our own development. I was lucky to start doing Montessori when I was still in my development, in my fourth plane, when I was 18, and it helped a lot in giving me that, how do I give back, and that vocation. But yeah, so that's the foundation. So then Montessori particularly focused on the first two planes of development. She talked about all, but there was that big focus there for sure. And so the children that we currently have, right, we have 3 to 6-year-olds. So they're in that second part of the first plane of development. So hope it doesn't get too confusing.
I should have brought up a chart.
Oh yeah, I'll make sure, if I don't have your emails, make sure to send it in, and I'll make sure to send you a follow-up email with charts and things like that. Yeah. Because it's a little different when you can look at it again. So the first plane is separated into two. You have the unconscious period and then the conscious period. So the unconscious is birth to age about 3, and it depends on for all children, but it's around that time. And that's when children act out of impulse. So everything they do is like, it's this, the ORM is the technical term, that desire to learn and grow. It's just that push. So you'll see a lot of times they're just gonna push something off their high chair to see what happens, but they're not thinking, like, I wonder if I push this hard, how fast it will go, and things like that, right? It's very just impulsive. And then the second part, the 3 to 6-year-old, that's when they're becoming much more conscious of what they're doing, and they are starting to understand more the power of their actions and wanting to have more choices. And again, all of that helped me to do it myself. I want to do this myself. I want to pour myself. I want to crack the eggs myself. I want to put on my shoes myself, even if it takes 2 hours and we're late for church, but I have to do it myself. So then what Montessori did, which is just amazing, and I say that a lot, is she took that understanding of children's development and created an environment that fits the needs at each plane. So a child in the first plane of development is going to have a very hands-on material. It's going to be a lot about making choices, and they're not as interested in their peers. They are for friendship, but their deepest focus is going to be learning mostly on their own, or maybe with one friend, and just really digging deep. That's where that big learning happens. That second plane of development, I'll let you talk on, is separate, is a little different because their needs are different.
Right. So a Montessori classroom for 6 to 12-year-olds still has these materials for learning some of those abstract concepts, such as long division or grammar, parts of a sentence and how to diagram and things like that. But the work is very much intellectual. So they'll have a material so they can grasp a concept, especially 1st through 3rd grade. But then after that, it might look more like a traditional classroom, because you've just moved with the child's ability to grasp a concept. Then the high school level or middle school level is going to look different again. And I've seen it when I used to live in Virginia. There were some beautiful, beautiful Montessori high schools, and they were, excuse me, again, it's just so simple. They looked very traditional, but they were very focused, and there was many opportunities for children to work with hands-on, again, figuring out themselves as like a social being and things like that, caring for chickens and things like that, but keeping up with the academics as well. So that's just to say, again, the 6 to 12 plane, which I've worked with and absolutely love that plane, the interest is very much on the social and intellectual and the moral development of the person. So you won't have a classroom that's actually quite so neat and tidy as like maybe these math materials. But at the end of the day, yes, at the beginning of the day, yes, but the interest is no longer in keeping everything so precise and neat and clean. In fact, I remember my first year having moved from primary where everything is just so ordered and everything is so precise. And then working with elementary students, and I was like, what's happening? There are pencils everywhere. There's paper everywhere. Like, this is the end of the world. It wasn't. I had to grow with them and learn with them that their interest in their activities was so deep and so interesting and so encompassing that it just took up the whole classroom. And that was fine up until lunchtime, and then we needed to clean up and get ready for lunch. And they were fine with that because it was part of the routine. But the interest was a burning fire that just took up the whole classroom.
Yeah.
And their teacher, but I had to learn. I had to learn.
I'm sure. And that's one of the reasons why I love being in primary, because of the sense of order. So going back to thank you so much. I love hearing about the older kids. And it's so fun to see in their third year, the 5 and 6 year olds, you can really start to see those tendencies where they're like just so close to being ready to just think completely, well, not completely, but just think abstractly. And they're able to play on a different level. They're able to,
the rules become so important.
Yeah. So it's really fun to be there with them during that development. And so for now, we'll focus on the 3 to 6 year olds. So there's just so much that happens during the 3 to 6 year old time frame during that development. The big thing that Montessori found was the absorbent mind, of how children just absorb language. And unfortunately, that doesn't last forever. I have tried sleeping with a book under my pillow and it didn't work. Very, very disappointing. But she saw that just by being, especially we see it with young babies and how they acquire language, they can just absorb it. And so she found that if the environment is rich in beautiful things and in things that meet their needs, learning kind of just almost magically happens. Yeah. And it's true, like, you know, occasionally I remember years ago, I was working with a child who was kindergarten age, and at the beginning of the year, didn't remember a single letter name, couldn't tell me any numbers. And I was like, we'll never read. And then something happened, and it had nothing to do with me. I just presented, and then the child, through the absorbent mind, was really able to grasp all these concepts. So it's always fascinating to really see that within the children. And during that period of the absorbent mind, children go through sensitive periods. So again, I'll have a cheat sheet for you to look through, just so you can look back on it. But the sensitive periods are just so fascinating. They're those little windows of time when the absorbent mind is particularly focused on a certain aspect. So on math concepts, on language. So children who have no experience, never hear language, or are feral children. There have been studies, and it's completely heartbreaking, but if they don't have human interaction until later on in their life, it becomes very hard for them to learn to speak or to understand language. And sometimes it's not possible at all, depending in extreme cases, which is very rare, but absolutely. But it just proves that intensity of the absorbent mind, of how much it grabs. One of my favorite facts is how if our brains was doing as much work as a 1-year-old's brain, our bodies would die. Our bodies could not handle how much power and how much is going on in a young child's mind. And I was like, wow, that puts it into perspective. And now we just need caffeine. They don't. We hope not. So during this time period, children are particularly sensitive to order. So, for example, Montessori always used an example of a young child, 2 or 3 years old, who was having this huge fit, this huge tantrum, and the mom couldn't figure out why. And it was just because she had put her coat on the chair instead of on the hanger where it belonged. So there's a lot with the physical aspect of order that's very important to them. So that's why in the classroom, you'll see everything has a place. And if I ever move something to a different place from last year to this year, doesn't matter. It will go back to where it was last year. It's very funny and sometimes frustrating, because I'm like, but I like it there. Anyway.
Here's a funny example. We used to have a classroom trash can Well, I'm sitting at the back of the classroom, but we used to have it by where the water bottles are kept. And someday you'll see that if you haven't been in here. Well, we moved it because we found a better place for it this year. And well, I'll see children, like they'll undo their cheese stick or they're sharpen their pencil. They need to undo, and they'll just walk over there. They're still talking to a friend and just put it there, but there's no trash can. And so there are times I'm like, excuse me, like we need to clean this up. But that's an example of how like just moving the trash can.
Yeah.
Everyone's used to it being somewhere else.
It's so true.
Yeah.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
Yeah. So order is just so important to them. And that's one of the really big things that we work on in the classroom, especially at the beginning of the year through our grace and courtesy lessons, is how to do things so that they have an understanding of the physical order, but also of the temporal order, of the order of things. So first we put our shoes, put our lunches, put our go to the change our shoes, put our lunches away, put our snacks away, get our water bottles, wash our hands, then come into the classroom. Then we're in the classroom. After the classroom, we get ready for either lunch or recess and things like that. So just having that set and consistent routine, as well as set and consistent places for things, is just so helpful to the young child. So other things that really, stand out for Montessori is how it's at each child's own pace. So within the classroom, we have children ages 3 to 6, and it's really, really beautiful to see how the older children are leaders to the younger children, and how sometimes the younger children remind the older children of exactly what to do. And it's also very sweet. There's always some fun stories with that. But my favorite is also seeing a child who comes in as a brand new 3-year-old, and then who leaves as a big grown-up 6-year-old. And my heart is, it's just incredible to see that growth that happens. And just to see them start off as the new kid, just brand new. Here I am. I'm figuring out what order means. I'm figuring out what it's like to roll a rug. That's a big deal. And then to leave knowing how to square and cube numbers and how to read and how to do all these things. Which was like, whoa. And give lessons. The older children will give incredible lessons to the younger children. And I know they're going to do it the way they've been shown, because they've just absorbed all that knowledge. So that's just really beautiful.
Yeah, and that's really the beauty of the Montessori environment. You might think, well, 3-year-olds learn differently than 6-year-olds, but really they learn the same way with this power of the absorbent mind. And so it's so important for those 6-year-olds to have that sense of finishing, that real sense of accomplishment by the 3rd year, because if they leave too soon, so to speak, they don't have that sense of closure, that full sense of accomplishment. But by the time they're 6, 7 years old, they're ready for something else. They're ready for a transition.
For sure.
This environment is no longer suited to them. But that sense of finishing and being together is beautiful. And the 3-year-old is learning the same way as a 6-year-old. The 6-year-old is just capable of more. Yeah. And that's where it's a truly unique community.
Oh, absolutely. No, I love that. Yeah. And that's really what happens, is it forms a community, with the ups and the downs, but mostly ups. But it's beautiful to see how they're able to grow together through some challenges. For example, learning, some certain social skills might not come easily at first, but as a team, as a community, they learn it together, and it's really beautiful. So one of the big aspects for this age group is the focus is more on the process than on the product. So very often for children this age, they'll make an amazing picture, they'll spend hours on it, and then 2 days later, they'll put it in the trash. I know they don't always. I know there are stacks of papers in all homes. I'm so sorry. I'm just kidding. But I love children's art, actually. It's just such a beautiful way to see their growth. But for them, the real learning isn't in, I have a finished product that I want to have on the fridge. That comes as they get older. For them, it's really about the process of it. I learned how to make a circle, and I just made it, and I made it, and I made it. Repetition becomes just so important in learning those skills. Again, back to the prepared environment, just having a space that is simple, home-like, beautiful, and ordered. This is one of the things I've been thinking on a lot this week. It was just like how homey it feels to be here.
Mhm.
Like I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going home to my, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to my classroom. Oh wait, no, I'm gonna go home to my own room. You know,
Right.
like the two get
So if the kids
mixed up.
think we live here, there might be some truth to that.
It's true. Well, not for bedtime though.
No.
The cots are not that comfortable when you're bigger, so I don't recommend. Just kidding. It's so hard to not get laughs. I miss the laughs. It's okay.
I'll do my best.
I see some smiles, so we'll say that counts. So, and then a big aspect of Montessori is the belief in that intrinsic motivation that young children have. They have that intrinsic motivation to learn and to be the best version of themselves that they can be. Unfortunately, as we get older, we tend to lose that. But this is such a gift that the 3 to 6-year-old child has. And one of the ways that we really nourish that in the classroom is through staying away from praise and rewards and punishment. So when a child shows, she's like, Miss Pauline, I did this. I was like, oh, tell me about it. Show me what you did, so that it stays their own intrinsic motivation instead of me saying, oh, good job, I'm going to give you a gold star, because then it becomes about me and my thoughts on their process or their product instead of their own. So in Montessori classroom, we'll rarely see any kind of rewards or punishments used. And often we don't, there's no need for punishment because we're able to relearn and reteach the procedures and the ground rules. And there's a large amount of really good peer pressure where the children really learn from each other. They see one friend doing something very well. They're like, oh, this is a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. I want to do that too. And it's just really cool to see those dynamics. Do you have anything to add before I move on to the next part?
Yeah, just kind of try to fill out illustrations of what Pauline's talking about. So if we have this mixed classroom of 3 to 6-year-olds, and we have a 6-year-old who's been with us for 3 years or 2.5 years, you have a little person who's so familiar with the rules and the routines and it's like having another little teacher in the classroom. And we also recognize as a natural part of this community that children are learning from each other. So it might be a 5-year-old who says, oh, let me show you how to do that polishing work. Obviously, Pauline gives the lesson and gives the direct instruction to each child. But once that child has made the choice to do the work and they're moving through it, it could be another child who says, oh, let me show you how to clean that. I can see you're confused. And so you really have this community that is of multi-ages, where you have younger ones learning from older children, and those younger ones eventually become the older children because they look up to them, they want to be like them. Everyone wants to be Miss Pauline, and so
that's scary.
Miss Erica, it's just so beautiful to see that that internal dynamic of the children. It's very natural. It's very organic.
Yeah, absolutely. Another big concept that you see in Montessori is that it's very reality-based, specifically for that first plane of development. So Montessori found that for children birth to 6, they want to know what's real. They want to know the truth. And whatever they see, they're going to believe is true. So with Montessori, we recommend avoiding screen time as much as possible, which was really hard last spring. Focusing on stories that are reality-based, because children will tend to obsess over certain things. Like I had a child who everything was about Halloween, no matter the time of year, no matter the time of day either. But it was not because he liked it, but it was more because he was trying to understand it. It was something that really didn't make sense to him because it wasn't completely real. So his brain, trying to make sense of it, was repeating and repeating until it clicked, right? Which we want them to do that with math and language and all these things. So that's why we want to give them those hands-on materials, that concreteness. We want to learn all about bugs. And just, there are always amazing stories too about, I've been finding a lot of bugs on my walks. So I brought some cicada shells, and
Oh gosh.
poor Miss Mari and poor Miss Emma, they're not a fan of me bringing in bugs, but Miss Erica is with me on it. So she brought in a dragonfly.
Oh,
So
no. I was kind of in between.
she
These are
balances
very
those out.
gnarly looking shells.
They're so cool, and they stick to you. Your kids will tell you all about it. I'm tempted to like go grab them and show you, but I won't. I'll send pictures. So just really focusing on reality. So fairy tales are so good and beautiful, but we save them for that second plane of development, because then the child has learned to start to think abstractly, and is able to understand the need of the morals and the virtues and the values that are taught through fairy tales.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times people are like, oh, Montessori was completely against fairy tales. It's like, no, she saw how good they are and thought and knew that it would be best for the second plane child, not for the first plane child. What's best for the first plane child is really just being focused on the concrete and the present. For example, I'll just show you a little bit, but in math, we start with the concrete representation of what a number is. So hold on. Oh, sorry. So for example, this is number 2, right? 1, 2, it's 2. That's just it. And then you have the abstract, yeah. And then you learn the abstract representation of 2. And the symbol doesn't really have any meaning if you don't first have the concrete. So first you have the concrete, then you move to the abstract of this is 2, and they learn the symbol 2 separate from the quantity. Then we put the 2 together. So we go from the concrete to the abstract, and then you put the concrete and the abstract together. And that's how the child at this age learns. So the child at this age is going to learn in a scaffolding pattern, right? Going from the easiest to the hardest, from the general to the specific, from the concrete to the abstract. And there's just a very intricate path that the children go through that we're really able to do through the Montessori materials, which is just another example of how genius Montessori was. I hated math deeply until I started doing my Montessori training, and someone showed me the bead cabinet right there, and where you learn how to cube and square numbers. And I was like, oh, so cubing and squaring numbers means you literally can cube and square a number. Oh, they look a lot closer. I thought I could reach, I can't. So for example, if you take 3 3 times, you can fold it up and it makes a square. And then you take 3 squares of 3 and you stack them and you have a cube. Who knew? I didn't, until I had that concreteness. And of course, many people have been able to learn that without having the materials, but just this shows how genius really Montessori's approach is and her materials. Everything in the classroom is child-sized to really facilitate for children to be able to do things for themselves. Practical life is such a beautiful way that we teach the children to do it themselves. So we have lots of pouring activities and buttoning and zipping for them to be able to learn to do it themselves. And then this is one of my favorite questions is people will be like, oh, I'm not sure about Montessori. I want something with more structure. And I was like, well, let me tell you about the Montessori structure. So it's actually a very, very structured environment. It just looks different than maybe how we grew up in a more traditional setting with desks, and you can only do certain things from a certain time and in this place, and then you move to that place. So that's not the structure we have. The structure we have is we tuck in a chair, we roll a rug, we put our hands on the teacher's shoulder to wait to ask a question. We learn not to interrupt each other. We can't do everything at the same time. We have to learn that first we begin with the simple lessons and then we move to the more complex and things like that.
Yeah.
Anything else on that?
That's pretty comprehensive.
Cool. Any questions? You guys are so quiet. I'm not used to this. And then just a little bit more about what Montessori work is. So your children might come home and tell you about their works, or they might tell you about snack, or they might not tell you anything, which happens a lot, which is completely normal at this age because they're so focused in the present that they're like, why are you asking me about something that happened hours ago? I don't need to think about that. I'm in the present. And they might also think that being mom and dad, you know everything. You're with them at all times. Even if they can't see you, why are you asking about things you already know? Doesn't make sense. So we'll try to give you a little bit of an insight in what they do here at school. So the foundation what helps create that foundation for the children for those higher level lessons is being able to have concentration and to repeat different lessons. So a child doesn't have a time limit on an activity. So a child can choose to work on the spindle box or on a pouring activity for as long as they want because of that urge they have to learn. But there's only one of those. So then the other children learn a natural way of sharing by being able to wait their turn. And then the child who is doing the material, the work that we call, will clean it up and make it look beautiful for the next person. So there's this natural taking care of each other that happens. That's really beautiful. And being able to do something over and over again is really how we learn. We know that the more we practice something, be it young children or us as adults, the better we can get at it. And when we know that when we can teach something, then we've really mastered a skill. So that's where it becomes just so beautiful when we see those 5 and 6 year olds giving the lessons, because then you're like, you really know this. You have that ownership of that knowledge. Freedom, independence, and discipline are 3 words I love very much that go hand in hand together. So within the Montessori classroom, the children have freedom and have independence and naturally learn discipline because they have freedom and independence. So they have the freedom to choose a work. So they're developing their will of being able to choose a work and use it correctly. So if a child misuses a work, then it gets put away and we try again next time. So it's teaching how to make responsible choices.
Yeah.
And choices that are not just from impulse, but from a conscious choice. And then that helps build their independence, and then that builds toward, hi Quinn, that helps build towards their intrinsic self-discipline, because we want them to be disciplined from their love of learning and their love of the people around them, not from, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. Which, many of us may have grown up with, but we really want something greater than that really comes from them, because that's something that's just going to stay with them their whole life and help them just in their full potential. One of Montessori's tough quotes, she has many that are tough, but one is, never help a child with a task that he feels he can succeed at. And that's really hard. When you're a Montessori teacher, you're like, oh, let me show you. But you're taught not to do that. You're taught to let the child struggle a little bit. Let the child come to that full knowledge on his own.
Well, that's what the interest is.
Right.
You could say, let's find a work. Well, let's find something interesting. Let's find something that's I'm not quite sure how to do, but I know Miss Pulley's going to do a lesson, so let's figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. So yeah, that's the struggle. The interest is what they actually need to grasp. So letting them do that, is awesome. Really, it's great. Yeah. That's where the learning happens for these little guys.
It really is. And then another way that Montessori's genius comes through her materials is that there's a lot of control of error. So for example, with the knob cylinders, would you get the knob cylinders? Sorry. If you're trying to put one of the knobs in the wrong hole, it's not going to fit. So at the beginning, this is a work that especially 3-year-olds will use. But then the 5 and 6 year olds love going back to it.
I'll hold it.
Yeah, perfect. So like if you take these out, and then I'm going to try to put this one in here. It's not going to fit that great. Okay. I didn't have to ask for help. I didn't have to, do something. I just figured it out on my own because of that control of error. But then if I go here, it's just not going to fit. So, okay, I have another option. So this is a really good example of a very simple way that there's control of error. So when they struggle with something, when do you know to intervene and to help? So that's such a great question. So a lot of that comes from observation. So Montessori, being a scientist and a doctor first, just really focused on the importance of observing. So if I see a child struggling, I might sit and watch. So there might be the kind of struggle of like, they're just thinking about it. They're, if a child is like, trying to put this one in here, I'm gonna watch. If there's an intense look in their eye and if they're really focused on figuring it out, then I know to step back. But if the child is just like this and just crying, well, I'm not gonna do that. You know, I'm gonna come and I'm gonna help. It's like, oh, this must feel so frustrating. How do you feel about this? What can we do? So it's really, that's really the big key is.
In my training for elementary, we laughed a lot about that correction of error being in the materials, because the materials, I mean, this block of wood and the precision for the holes and the apertures and the cylinders going in each one, it's like, well, this material is always patient, it's always kind, it's always ready to teach a new lesson. I mean, we were like, wow, if I could just be like this block of wood, always patient, always kind, always loving, always willing, always wanting the best. Wow. So that's just that's a really neat thing that child can succeed at this himself. Of course, I could give him a lesson, probably gives him a lesson, but he could also figure it out. It's like, wow, like what a great sense of accomplishment for a little person. Yeah.
And Montessori really focused on the preparation of the teacher. So we as Montessori teachers, when we walk in, we teach the children how to put their hand on our shoulder, how to roll their rug, how to carry a chair. But we're the model for that. And I know, like, and so we're the model for, you know, how to be gentle with the materials, for how to, but especially how to observe. And I think that's where what we ask the children, we ask of ourselves too. And which is hard. It's very humbling.
We are adults. We work in the world as adult people, and then having to adjust and realize these little people are learning in a different way, and to slow down and learn with them and to model for them. It's humbling.
Yeah, because me as an adult, I mean, I can carry this under my arm. Don't let the kids see this. I could carry it under my arm, and I could like walk very fast across the room, but that's not what's going to help the children.
She can carry a lot of things.
And I could carry a lot of things because I'm an adult, and probably something on my head. But for the children, that's not what's best for them, especially at this age. So I also carry one thing at a time. And I also walk very slowly and carefully to respect the concentration of the other children. Before we move on, some other questions that came up is it okay to ask your child at the end of the day what was something good and what was something not as good, you know, that maybe happened at school today? I think that's great because you're teaching the children to remember what happened in the past, as long as it's not stressful to the child. So I would just say, I would just say, making sure to just make it, oh, hey, can you tell me, you know, one good thing or one, and make it something relaxing, because some children might get stressed by it. But also model yourselves like, hey, can I tell you one good thing that happened to me at work today? Actually, there were many, but I'm going to tell you one. And then by you modeling, they're going to naturally do that too. So I think that's a beautiful way to start teaching that concept, because even though it's still very abstract to them and they're maybe not ready, it's by teaching them little by little and modeling that they learn the skill. So kind of like with math, what I was showing, like you go step by step. So maybe first you talk about your day, and then afterwards you
or you could say, what was your favorite thing? A child might,
or work is a big keyword.
What was your favorite part of the day, or favorite thing you did?
I mean, always ask about snack. They'll tell you everything about snack. Yeah. There's not much else in the world apart from snack. Just kidding. But they do love their snack. And then another question that popped up was some hymns and prayers that you can do at home. And I have some of them on Shutterfly, so make sure you log on to Shutterfly. It's been a little tricky this year. I tried adding everybody, but you still have to log on, and I still have to approve you, even though I added you. So
yeah, that's because it's a secure,
which is good. Yes, so it's very secure. It's almost extra secure this year for some reason. So so we'll keep going. Don't forget to keep adding your comments in. And I had another comment of how, you know, during that absorbent stage, it can be a little terrifying of how much of the model we are. And that's very true. And that's why it's so important for us to have our own community of adults to help us learn and grow and do our own examinations of conscience, and
don't forget to have a sense
follow
of
the
humor.
Good Shepherd, have a sense of humor.
I was actually somebody spilled water this afternoon, and so I was reaching for a towel to to get a towel to clean it up, but I knocked over a huge vase of flowers.
Oops.
And just there was water everywhere, and there was nothing to do but sit down and laugh about it.
It's like, hey, now we can clean up.
It's a good thing it's just water.
Oh, and then a parent also said another question that they find helpful to ask their child is, what did you do on the rug today? And I think that's beautiful, because then it's bringing it back to something concrete.
Mm-hmm.
So because like, what did you do today? It might feel too abstract for them and too big. So asking, what did you do on the rug today? Or what did you do at a table? And so the children have the freedom to work either at a table or on a rug. And it's really beautiful. It's just a very industrious hive during the morning, and it's just really beautiful to see. So those are great questions. Or, who was sitting near you, or, yeah. So those are always great questions to ask to help build that concreteness. So I'm going to go ahead and keep going through a little bit more about Montessori works. And so care of self and the environment is taught through our grace and courtesy lessons, where we practice, we model, and it's usually really dramatic and fun. Like, do I yell across the room? And your children can probably reenact it. I was like, do I call out, hey, Miss Erica, come here? And then the children will just start laughing so hard. They're like, we don't do that. We walk over to Miss Erica and we put our hand on her shoulder and we ask. And so it's always a very dramatic and very fun way to start our year. And then this way throughout the year, we just remind them. It's like, do you remember, how do we go talk to someone who's far away from us? And often we have to practice, and that's okay. And I've been needing reminders too. So again, it keeps us humble. And then, so we learn, all of these things we learn together. Part of the prepared environment within the classroom is part of the ways that everything is organized. Is everything is set up from left to right, from top to bottom, from easy to hard. So for parents, when you come to school, the clean pens are always going to be on the left, and the dirty pens are always going to be on the right, because it goes from left to right. There you go. So this is how we we keep the sense of order outside too. So the reasoning behind that is to meet their need for order, but it's also training the children to start to look from left to right, to prepare them for reading and writing, and it's teaching that, it's reinforcing that sense of order. Yeah, really. Sorry if I start to repeat myself, I apologize. And control error, we talked about. Isolated concepts is a big Montessori keyword, and that's where the knot cylinders was really just focusing on that concept of big to small. The number rods is really focusing just on numbers. It's not focusing on numbers and colors. Sorry, we're making faces at each other. For example, the color tablets are going to focus on just the first box, only on the first primary colors. There we go. But they're not going to focus on a bunch of other things at the same time, It's
not a green leaf, an orange pumpkin, a red apple. It's just red, just yellow.
And they're all the same shape and size, exactly.
Right.
So they look the same because it's focusing on one concept. And that just really is good for the brain, and just allows that learning to really become solidified. Yeah. So like when we do different projects, it's not like grab everything you can, right? Because then that kind of just muddles the brain. It kind of shows like, okay, my brain is everywhere. I have stuff everywhere. That's Miss Pauline at about 4 p.m. But then when I take the time to like reorganize my things and focus on one thing at a time, things happen so much faster. It's amazing. And I remember things better. So all the materials the children have access to are beautiful and complete, and ready for the next person. And then we really focus on the 4 core elements that we really focus on while the children work is building their independence, building their concentration, building their coordination, and building their sense of order. We have a lot of fine motor activities to really build the strength in their hands. At home, I would highly recommend having lots of Play-Doh or kinetic sand for them to really strengthen their hands, because that's going to just really help with handwriting as we move forward in the year. So the biggest goal, well, not the biggest goal. The biggest goal is for them to become saints and be the best version of themselves, of course. But one of the goals that we have in the classroom is called normalization. So normalization.
It's a Montessori word.
Right. It's one of those big keywords of like, wait, what does that mean? So all it means is another term for it would be equilibrium, right? It's just being in a happy place, being in a place where learning comes easily and there's joy. And it's really beautiful. I'm going to read you a quote from Montessori about normalization, because it may sound like a scary term, but it's actually really beautiful. And I know some days I'm normalized and some days I'm not.
The full moon does happen.
Oh, that's so real. A natural developmental process exhibited by a love of work or activity, concentration, self-discipline, and joy in accomplishment. That's the definition of normalization. Dr. Montessori observed that children in Montessori programs exhibited normalization through repeated periods of uninterrupted work, during which time they work freely and at their own pace on their own chosen activities. A normalized child is a happy, well-adjusted child who exhibits positive social skills in the Montessori classroom. So that was not Montessori's quote, my bad. But just this quote just kind of helps to explain what that means. And our goal for all the children is to be happy and to have those positive and interactions with their peers, and to just really have that cycle, that confidence and that self-discipline. And some days, you don't get all the sleep you needed because baby brother woke up. And so then it's hard. You can tell that there's something just a little bit off, something that's a little bit hard for them to work through. And that's where, again, that key of observation comes in for being able to really guide them in that. All right. So the next thing, should we talk a little bit about the Montessori areas?
Yeah, I think yeah, absolutely.
Actually, before that, I am going to talk a little bit more about the structure of the day. So and then we can go through, we'll go through those. So the structure of the day is, as soon as the children arrive, they're coming right into the classroom. And so Miss Irene and I switch, so then I'm in the classroom right away and I can see them. It's been really fun. I just take notes on which work they do first. And some children will wonder for a few minutes before they choose something. Yeah. Some children, they're like, I was waiting for this yesterday. I'm doing this work. I've got it. I've got the plan. And it's really cool to see just their personalities and how they work. And so we're in the classroom for a good 3 hours. And during that time, the children are able to go through all of the various areas that we're going to talk about. So one child might start in practical life and do pouring, and then do another practical life activity, transferring corn or transferring sunflower seeds. That's one of the ones we have right now. Sunflower seeds from one cup to another. And then they're going to go to the easel and draw, and then they're going to go read a book, and then they're going to go do a math lesson, and then they're going to go have snack, and then they're going to do a lesson with me, and then they're going to go do something else. So that's kind of the cycle for the whole day. And I'll send a video. It's called a Montessori Morning, and it's a fast-forwarded child's day. So you can kind of just see how they just bounce around. And again, there's no limit on how long they can be in one area or another. And it comes to us as the teachers to observe, oh, I noticed this child hasn't been very interested in math. Let's see if I can find a way to bring that interest into them. And I'll be like, oh, hey, I'm ready. Are you available for a new lesson? Or sometimes I'll say, hey, I have a new lesson for you. Sometimes it's a choice, and sometimes it's a little bit less than a choice, and that's okay. That's part of the guidance, the gentle guidance that we have at school. And it's really beautiful, because I might see a child who loves to draw and who might do drawing all day, every day. That's it. But then my job as an observer, as a guide, and as a teacher is going to be like, oh, I noticed how much you love to draw. Can I show you how we can use the beads, and then we can draw the beads after? Or can I show you how we can write some words together with the movable alphabet, and then we could draw a picture of the words that we wrote? So then that's kind of that beautiful aspect. So just so you're aware that for 3 hours, the children have that freedom of movement, and it's really beautiful. So Miss Irene, do you want to talk about a couple of the areas, and then
so there's some very distinct areas of the classroom. Even though the children can go to any area, we still have distinct areas. So the sort of core work of the Montessori classroom at such a young age is called practical life. Those are just the fine motor movements like pouring and spooning, and they get rotated out. Pauline actually just changed it out the other day. So that's where we see the connection with home, in terms of like, sometimes they'll do a work and it gets a little dirty, but we could go into the atrium and we can wash those dishes. That's a practical life work. It's pretty involved and it's incredibly valuable because it's actually a preparation for the mathematical mind, because there's a very distinct sequence of steps that need to be gone through in order to do the work. And then it has to be cleaned up and ready for the next person. And I used to just really enjoy, we did this last year, but we would have something like a food prep or like something like that. And the children were like, oh, great. You know, it's like an extra snack. They'd be so excited to do it. And then they'd have to clean everything. And so they'd spend like an hour, like they prepare it, they eat it, they enjoy it. Then it's the cleanup process. So I thought that was pretty tricky, this Pauline, but it was beautiful to see that independence and interest on the part of the children. So practical life is where you see those. We also have some nuts and bolts and some tools. So the children are, you know, turning the screw and the screwdriver and things like that. So it's pretty fun.
And that big focus on those 3 fingers.
Yes.
Pincer grip.
Or the left hand sometimes.
True.
Some are left-handed.
Idea.
So that's the practical life area. The next area that's most distinctly Montessori is called Sensorial. And Dr. Montessori, well, we saw the cylinder block, we saw the color tablets. Those are the kinds of materials that she designed to isolate a sensorial concept. So, you know, like I said, it's just yellow, blue, red. It's not anything else than that. And so the language goes with that. The extension games of like, can we find something in the classroom that is green or something in the classroom that is pink? And, you know, we go on and we match all the colors. But that a mental awareness of like, oh, I know that's pink, but like, I also begin to see the connections in the world around me. Those are pretty beautiful. There's also not just the visual sense, the kinesthetic sense, the baric sense, the auditory sense. So that's where we have bells. So we really refine the senses. And there's language, there's so much language that goes with it. You don't just have this experience without a name for it. Right. This is dark, that's light. This is darker, that's lighter, lightest. So all of that language goes with the sensorial area. Oh gosh, I wish we could be here.
I know.
Touch it. It's
last year was so fun when all the parents were able to choose their own work to test out. It was so great.
Yeah, that was great.
I had a thought to add to Sensorial. Oh, and the beauty of Sensorial too comes from, it's not Miss Irene telling all these things are pink. It's the child discovering all these things are pink. So it really becomes their own knowledge, and it's something that becomes a part of them, and that's so much more valuable than just being told what something is, but discovering it too. Yeah, or what's biggest and smallest, and through the materials, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Funny things happen, like they might be matching colors, and like, Miss Irene, you have a purple jacket. I need to match purple. Like,
or you have teachers who show up matching perfectly.
Oh yeah, that's true too. So another area is language and writing. You might have seen this on some of your tours, but we have a whole wall of just sandpaper letters. So the children actually see those letters and those sounds.
Turn it so you can see it.
Yeah, let's let them see it.
But then you'll see the chairs are up on the. Can you see it over there? Yeah. Hopefully you saw that.
And the sandpaper letters. Those come down all the time, frequently. Pauline's always teaching them with them. Actually, Erica is. I do it. Mari does it. It's pretty beautiful. But a lot of the language actually begins with the auditory sense and just the rich sensorial experience, constantly getting language to go along with their experience. Then we do the sounds. Then it's what's called the movable alphabet, where we have all these little letters of the sounds they've all learned. And then they could say, oh yeah, cut at.
There was a lot of that going on today. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And this year is especially interesting how we haven't seen the children in so long. So some of the children, we were just starting on the sounds, and now they're like, I got this. Let's write words. I'm ready. And it's been just so incredible to catch up to them, you know.
So that obviously continues and becomes much more involved the longer the children are here. I mean, we get into parts of speech, nouns, verbs, adverbs, and every part of speech is symbolized, and so that it's a launching pad. It's incredible. Then there's mathematics. So there's number recognition. We saw some of the, oh yes, all of this behind us is the math area.
There's more over here.
Yeah. And we saw the number rods with Miss Pauline and moving from the concrete to the abstract. And being able to do the 4 operations of mathematics very easily because they already have the concept of quantity. So adding, these are thousands behind me. So children could add units to thousands. So units, tens, hundreds, thousands. Yeah. Because they can move them around. And then they have cards that go with them and they can put them together, and that's the operation of arithmetic. You can take it away, then you have subtraction. But that's not the only way to do it. All of these shelves reinforce those operations. So, you don't want to do addition with the beads? Okay, well, we'll try something else. And it might be the material that really connects them in. Yeah. So that's part of the beauty of Bruegger Montessori is that while it starts out here with all this like really concrete stuff, it's constantly moving to more and more abstract stuff to where you have the abacus and you're adding and subtracting and multiplying. This isn't for division. Into the thousands. So it goes from that to this. And
then just to numbers.
Yeah, so they do this even in elementary. Yeah. So that continues for a long time. The other area is cultural, which includes the science, geography, botany, zoology, study of countries. It's particularly rich in this classroom because Pauline is French, Erica's background is Polish. I mean, we've got stuff.
It's really fun.
It's really cool, though, because Pauline has pictures of when she was a girl in France. And they're like, oh, that's Pauline. And she lived in this other country. It was the continent of Europe. And so that real-life connection is being made.
If you ever travel to other countries, feel free to bring us knickknacks.
Yes, please.
Kooky things. I actually have
seashells.
We have a drawer for Europe, for all the continents. But in the Europe one, we have pieces of the Berlin Wall that a friend brought back. Yeah. So we don't go about the history of it, but they get to touch a piece of a very important wall. And later on, they'll learn the story. Yeah. We'll wait for that.
And then I saved the best for last because it is the foundation of what we do here at Sophia Montessori, but it's the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, or as we sometimes call it, just CGS. And I'm actually going to, I should have said that.
It's already 6.
It's already 6. Well, we'll talk about it. But it's the hands-on material of the life of Christ, the parables of the Good Shepherd. It's the
geography.
It's all of those aspects that you find in the classroom, but it's all focused on the life of Christ. So it's particularly enriching and foundational and foundational of what we do here and for your child's life.
And we also, because they're in a sensitive period for language, we give them the real words. So when we do geometric solid shapes, we'll do, this is a cylinder and this is a square base pyramid and this is an ovoid. And when we talk about the church, we also use the real terms and the real words. For example, we'll talk about, this is the discos that holds the bread that becomes the body of Jesus. And so it's, we've been focused a lot on seasons and the seasons that change within the life of the church. So it's Christ as the Good Shepherd and the children as an active participant in the life of the church. And it's just been really beautiful. We had a quick church visit today and it was, my heart was, it was beautiful. We sang in front of the iconostas, the holy doors, and it was like angels singing. All the children were singing, and it was just it was beautiful. I was close to tears, but then we had to go, so I was like, okay, I'll cry later. But it was deeply beautiful.
Yeah, it really was. So those are the areas, 6 distinct areas in the classroom that your child is experiencing every day and going through them, along with the book corner and the snack area
and art
and art. Oh gosh,
singing songs and music.
Yeah. Pauline as an artist, it's like particularly enriching. So, she's an artist. Yeah.
Thanks. We're all artists. We've been making self-portraits, so we've been practicing. So it is already a little bit past 6, but we're happy to stick around for a little bit longer. So feel free to ask any questions. briefly, if you're able to stick around for a little bit longer, I do want to talk a little bit about at home. So what can you do at home? So the home should not be the same as the classroom. The classroom feels home-like and homey, but it's not made to be like, to take over home, to replace home. Just like at home doesn't need to be the same as school, but there are certain things that you can do at home that are just going to help you and help your child just really blossom more and have that peace that comes through normalization. So allowing time for independence. So sometimes it's good to, start getting ready a lot earlier so that they can struggle with their shoes for a little bit longer and have that success. Teaching before something happens. So if you're going to have guests over, maybe before your guests come, taking the time to say, oh, this is what we do when a guest comes, and role playing it at home. So you can have your own grace and courtesy lessons at home. And just being like, this is how we greet someone. Or when we want to find out someone's name, this is a very important one with young children, to say, hi, my name is Pauline. What's your name? Because very often a young child's like, who are you? What's your name? And we're like, well, let's learn that courtesy. How do we engage that? I would highly encourage moving away as much as you can from rewards and punishments, and really just focusing more on that intrinsic motivation. Now, it's a lot easier said than done, and hopefully we can do more of these so we can dig deeper into each of the subjects. So shoot us an email, put it in the chat if you have certain topics that you would love to learn more about. I don't think we're going to be able to do a lot outside of Zoom this year, unfortunately, but hopefully we can do some other chats.
Maybe we could role play.
Okay,
I'll be your student.
It's easier for kids with kids. But yeah, exactly. So let us know what is interesting to you. And then moving away from praise and saying good job, and just good job becomes such an easy word to say, of like, oh, good job. Just say, oh, you did that, or who did that, so that it comes back to them. And tell me how you did that, or tell me how you feel about what you did. Kind of just allowing for just a deeper sense of their independence and their confidence. Lots of unstructured time at home is good. They need time to play. They need, time to draw, write, read stories together, and all of that. Involving your children in the daily life of the home. So in cooking, cleaning, we have a folding lesson here, so they know how to fold in triangles, in squares. So when you do laundry, I highly recommend involving them in that as well. Watering plants, caring for pets, those are all things they want to be a part of. And it's finding, you can always ask us. We're happy to show you some of the smaller size materials that we use that help make it that they can be successful. Maybe a giant broom isn't going to work for a 3-year-old, but a smaller size broom might work just well. And we work really hard on how to sweep. So we have a little square on the floor.
Oh yeah.
And the children learn to sweep everything into the square, because it's really hard at first when you're learning to sweep. It gets everywhere. So we learn how to condense it. So I hope that helps. And then discussion. So at home, modeling, having conversations together, and having your own grace and courtesy lessons. And then learning more about Montessori. So don't hesitate to ask us anything. One of the messages we got is about sharing more about, like, a cheat sheet for the items and of Divine Liturgy, and I'll be happy to send that along. So that's kind of the basic overview, just so you have a better understanding of what your child's day looks like. And we'll make sure to send a follow-up email with all of that. So Leah and Josh, I'll make sure to add you on there. So yeah, we
love questions.
Any questions? Yeah, don't hesitate.
So of course, always send us questions and thoughts that come to mind. And I know sometimes you just have to live it, but that's okay too. But yeah, thank you so much for just a beautiful school year so far, and sending our children to us. And it's been such an honor and privilege to work with them. So thank you.
And it really is. So thank you all so much. And since I don't see more questions, we're going to go ahead and end it here. But don't hesitate to send any emails or anything like that. And hopefully we'll let you know if we're able to do this again really soon. And we will send a recap of the planes of development. So again, those are going to be, the first plane is birth to 6, with the primary goal being physical independence. And 6 to 12 being intellectual independence, 12 to 18 being social independence, and 18 to 24 being spiritual independence. Oh, good. I see some messages coming through. Leah, I do believe I have your email, but go ahead and put it in here just in case. And Montessori Services. So we have a fundraiser. Oh, we have a couple of announcements. Absolutely.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
We have a couple fundraisers that are always, well, we have some that are always happening, but one that's coming up is through For Small Hands, which is through Montessori Services. So if you buy some Montessori materials from them and activities and you put in our school code, the school gets money back, and usually that money we end up using to buy replacement materials. So it happens that glass will break, and that's okay. That's part of life, and the children learn to be very careful, and it works out well. But so yeah, so keep an eye out. We'll be sending a magazine with you very soon. Josh and Leah, thank you so much. And then we have our gala coming up, and
Yes.
it's going to be virtual, kind of like this. And
Except
that's a
more
little
fun.
scary. Hey, this was fun. I made jokes.
So this is more fun. It'll be more fun.
It'll be even more fun.
Yeah.
There we go. I like that.
Because we have
And
some amazing parents working on it and putting
yes.
it together. So it's not just us. It'll be you guys putting it on too. So
Yeah,
if you'd like to help out with it, feel free to send an email just to the school,
that'd be great.
and I'll put you in
our
touch
emails
with
too.
the parents committee, and we could definitely use help with gathering auction items. So
Oops, I meant to send that to everyone. Sorry.
oh yeah.
I did that wrong. And then the other thing too is if anybody is like super awesome and wants to, you know, do all the Facebook stuff, Facebook Live stuff, chat with me.
Yeah, we're figuring out a lot of how to do this online, and we have a friend of ours who's doing a gala for his business a week after ours, and we were kind of wishing his was first so we could watch it.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, we're learning this as we go. So even your technical support would be great. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. It'll be a good party, and then it'll be a great party, and the auction items are going to be really
I
exciting.
think they'll be really
so
nice.
yeah, and we're still accepting sponsors if anybody has a company they'd like to have showcased. And then I think those are the big things. Put us on your Amazon Smile, King Supers, box tops, and milk caps. We just turned in like a lot of milk caps. I forget how many. Oh, he told me it's a lot. But anyway, so that's all from us, and we can't wait to hear more from you throughout the year, and hopefully we do another one of these relatively soon. God bless you guys, and we appreciate everything you do. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Here, we'll see everybody say